Out here doing some scouting today in public land in Wisconsin. This is a place where I've probably got about, I want to say 10 total miles-ish of boots on the ground. But I've only hunted it once, mostly because it's not very convenient of a place to get to. But there's enough stuff that I like about the place that I just keep coming back to scout it some more. So far my plan is just to really walk the transition lines, especially around some of the edges of the tamarack and some of the other hardwood swamps, and also kind of keep an eye out for sheds. Some of the beds that are used during the season, some of the scrapes and stuff are going to be kind of covered up, but I think I should still be able to get a lot of value out of today's walk. It is hard to tell what the swamp's going to look like in terms of water levels. I did see some guys ice fishing yet on the drive over here, but I've also seen some other ponds and stuff that look like they're pretty wide open. So I brought the mudders and I brought the hip boots just in case. So we'll see what happens. So I just found a spot that I'd consider like a really good rifle stand spot, where I'm kind of in this open area right now in the middle of kind of like there's tamarack swamp that direction. I'm in just kind of open swamp right here, or open marsh, and then the hardwood is kind of back that way behind me. And this tree that I'm looking at here, turn the camera around, that big tamarack right there, I mean that's one of those trees where once rifle season comes around, especially opening weekend, all that hardwoods up there, that's kind of where the main access is. So opening weekend, the guys walking around up there, they'll push these deer out into these swamps like this, and once they get out into this stuff, they're not used to people walking around or being able to shoot in here. So they start getting comfortable, they start moving slow again and back to their normal routine. So then if you can get up in a big tree like that one right there, you can potentially have a ton of shooting with a rifle out into this kind of stuff, especially if you get real high, like 25-30 feet. I've seen some of my highest number deer days hunting out of trees like that during the firearm season. It's tough for me to say exactly how much these tracks have melted and enlarged, but at the size they are right now, it's a pretty dang big track. So be curious to see how fresh that track is. I'm sure it's gone through some kind of melting, which makes it look bigger than it actually is, but it definitely wouldn't surprise me at all if there's some big deer running around in the swamp. And that was the first tree I picked out as a potential firearm stand. And if you look at this one right over here closer to the main hardwoods, again, another really good option to where I'm standing right now. You got some of this taller grass providing some good mixture of cover out in this open area. And we got that super heavy trail right along this edge. And there's definitely a few hardwood trees that you could pick out to be able to hunt that trail with a bow. Well, we'll see what it looks like from the other side. That'll be the main determining factor as to whether that tree or that tree ends up being a better bet. This place I'm standing at right now, I don't see any actual beds, but this like 20-yard area is just packed down with a whole bunch of tracks. It's got trails converging in kind of multiple directions and a ton of droppings. I do want to check out further that direction. There's a trail that looks like it heads into what's probably an island of tamarack out into the swamp. Definitely gonna check that out for some beds. Alright, so this right here definitely appears to be a bed, and granted there's like some ice and water and stuff, but here's a white hair, big pile of droppings right in the middle of it, and you can tell that like just in this general area that I'm sitting right here, there's snow in most of this stuff, but yet right here it's more open. So my guess would be that this little area right here where there's actually some ice is probably exactly where he lays. This tree right here, you can tell from about here to here is definitely rubbed, and I'd say about 15 yards behind me is where the hard line of the open like water swamp actually starts. And not too far behind that, there's actually a little island of raised tamaracks that maybe has, I don't know, 10, 15 trees on it. So My guess is that he might be bedding here sometimes, and if you see something out in this open woods that freaks him out or whatever, he can just pop right back. There's actually a trail with tracks I can see heading back that direction that he can just escape right back into that swamp. So it's actually, from what I can see here, with the snow on the ground especially, you cannot get close to this bed. If he's sitting here facing this direction, gosh, I can see snow on the ground for probably, I don't know, I want to say like 80, 100 yards at least. And the problem is, it's all kind of the same out here. So it's not like one hard to find trail that he's taken to get out of this particular bed. Granted, once this stuff starts greening up, you can probably get pretty close. There's a couple trees that are maybe, 40, 50 yards you could sneak into. But once the foliage is down, definitely cannot get close to this bed, at least from that open hardwoods direction. But again, that's one of those things too, where once the hunting pressure starts hitting, backing up into that swamp, coming in from the backside, and just kind of hanging out there and waiting for the, the firearms pressure to push deer out. It's deer that jump out of beds like this, then get kicked out into that swamp. Those would be the kind of opportunities you can maximize on. Here's that trail leading out from the back of that buck's bed. Only 20 yards behind the bed, and look at this nice island with that great escape trail right out into the swamp in that direction. So I'm looking at this island, and there's already some of these spots behind some of these bigger clumps of trees that look nice and dry. I've definitely checked for bedding. And then right over here, that's that other tree that I was thinking. So right in the backside of this is all that open marsh that I was thinking you could be able to cover and get that deer movement pushed out into that open space. And same thing right there, that buck was bedded just right back here. So if he gets bumped from anything in the hardwoods, his number one escape trail is going to come right through here, through this little island. And I can access from the same way that I came in here to access scouting today, by coming in from the back side of that swamp and coming in this direction. Be great for an early morning setup to get, basically put into one of those trees a couple hours before light. And that's just a matter of finding a spot in one of those trees where you can actually get a few shooting lanes out of, because they're so thick. But the advantage to those too is that you can pretty much get away with doing whatever you want in those trees. You're not going to get picked out that easily. None of these other trees that I can see in here really look rubbed, but there's definitely deer traffic. I mean, that part of it is pretty obvious, that there's deer that use this. Even, there's a trail going out that way too. Trail going out the end here. They use sometimes these little islands of high ground in these larger swamps, sometimes as like like the spokes on a wheel, like what Dan Infalt talks about. In some of these tamarack swamps like this, when I grew up hunting them, especially in firearm season, man, it was like they would just zigzag from these little clumps, and you would always find a trail. No matter what trail you were on, it would eventually meet up to one of these types of chunks of land. The only challenge is you get in one of those trees, deer walks right underneath you, and it's really hard to even find a shooting lane because those trees are so thick. You almost have to have the deer kind of walk out a ways to be able to get a clear shot at them. More droppings. Yeah, this whole thing is just, it's not seeing any like clear-cut beds, not seeing any rubs, but definitely droppings and tracks throughout the whole thing. Now here, look what we got here. We got a little thumb tack, reflector tack. And that's kind of what I was thinking. I wouldn't be like totally surprised. Like some of the stuff seems pretty obvious when you're looking at like an aerial photo. Like these little clumps of like tamaracks like out in the middle of the swamp, like they seem super obvious, but not all the time. When you see hunter sign, doesn't mean that there's a guy like always hunting here. It might just be that he found this just like I'm taking a scouting trip one day, and maybe that was 20 years ago and now he never hunts here anymore. It's hard to really say for sure without actually having some in-season experience or some really recent hunter sign. So I'm just going to walk out the back side of this little island and see what direction it points. Yeah, look at this tree right in front of me here. That's the one that I was pointing at that I said could be potentially a good tree to set up in. And this might be the type of area where it takes me a few years to really figure out exactly what's best. That tree is definitely climbable with climbing sticks. That one I was looking at earlier right over there, once you get past 10 feet, it looks pretty doable. I actually do like that tree a lot for covering this side. I like that a lot, but you can't really cover much of anything to the other side of that island. Alright, so let me play this out for you. I looked at the island, I walked to the edge of these trails, find some of these bur oaks, and just started walking one of these trails out toward these little isolated tamarack trees. They're not very big, but that means that they got some high ground there. And I'm looking at one of these tamarack trees, and right at the base of it, we got a shed. Yeah, buddy. Look. Look at that guy. So now, like, I would assume that even though this is really wet right now, because all the snow just melted, this is probably dry during the season, which means this very well could be his bed that I'm at right now. There's no rub on that tree, but any of these little isolated tamaracks like this very well could be the spot where, you know, some of these deer are bedding. And I'll tell you right now, I have a tree that's just perfect for if he is bedded here. I know exactly where I set up, so I'll go back. I'll check the rest of these tamarack trees out here for sheds too, and I'll go back and show you exactly how I would set up, assuming this deer is bedded right here. So here's that tree, and looking toward the island, this is kind of what this deer can see. So there's one tree right here that I want to be able to sit in, and I can tell that once there's some foliage here, I'll be able to get up no problem in that tree and be able to set up there, and that's where that trail leads, right past that tree. Probably only 60 yards, I guess, to that tree from where I'm standing. Alright, so that's the tree right there I found the shed at. And you can see as I pan left here, all this stuff out behind this island is just prime bedding. Look at all that tall grass, all these little isolated tamaracks, all this kind of, you know, hip to shoulder high brush. Got some more of that tall grass I can see out that direction. This whole area could be great for bedding. It's really tough, almost impossible to access from the backside. And there again, you can see that tree right there on the edge, which is definitely the ideal tree that I would want to set up in for this particular bed. All right, now this tree right here is, again, not like a confirmed bed. There's no rub, there's no hair, it's all underwater. But I believe a lot of that's just because this really recent snow melt, the water levels are as high as they're going to be right now. And so I think during season, this is probably going to be dry. And I think there's a deer bedding here. He's got great back cover with all that tall grass. He's got all the room in the world to escape to behind him. And then he's got that food source, you know, 70, 80 yards that way toward that island. And the other thing that makes me think this is probably a bed is there's a really heavy trail cut through this brush. When I say cut, just kind of worn down, just real heavy trail. And there's about 8 droppings in the nearest like 20 yards from where I'm standing to that wood line. So I'm just gonna go ahead and make the assumption that this is probably a bed. I'm gonna go walk this back to hit that tree line and see what tree, again, would make sense for this bed to be able to set up in. So at this point, it seems like he can go take a right here, or he can kind of cut left and go through that tall grass to get to the wood line. I'll follow this one back and just see if it meets up with that first trail that goes right past that tree I was originally planning on sitting in. Yeah, you can see this track in the snow. Well, here's the opening out of that brush, and there's the tree right there. That first tamarack is right there where I had the bed, or the shed, excuse me. That second one is back that direction. Without a doubt in the world, that is the tree to be in right there. Alright, so at this point, I've found 2 potential locations where the deer can enter the woods pretty much right here. I found the tree that I want to be hunting out of. I took video of the tree, which kind of gives me an opportunity to look back before I would come to hunt the spot and just kind of confirm, okay, I want to be able to sit right there. This is a saddle tree, or this is a tree stand tree. This is how many sticks I want to bring in. And then I can look at the waypoints and see exactly how much distance that deer has to cover. So I found the shed to this tree 100 feet, so super close. Luckily, like I found when I was actually sitting there at deer level, I can get up a pretty good distance in that tree without that deer seeing me if this stuff has foliage on it. The other spot where I'm pretty sure there was a bed, or there was going to be a bed as soon as it dries up, is about 220 feet. So both of those opportunities, less than 100 yards, got to be super stealthy, super quiet, super slow setting up. And for me, it works out about perfect being a lefty, because where that little opening is, where that trail popped out, that's going to be like a 20 to 30 yard shot. I won't have to turn as a lefty, and I can be hiding behind that tree in the saddle and just have that right side of my body exposed where I can just draw back and take that shot.